to Tapped Out, hosted by Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine, only on the BetQL Network.
And a good Saturday evening. We appreciate you checking us out wherever you are on the BetQL Network with Brendan Tobin and my producer, Jake Noecker. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, and we're going to talk a lot of fighting, some UFC, a little bit of boxing. Not much of a fight being put up right now by your Miami Heat against the Boston Celtics, dude. Down 25 points in the first half. What up?
I mean, they couldn't take care of the ball at all in the first quarter. I think they put up like 13 points. It was abysmal offense. And then, Boston's so talented, they're going to get hot because they actually had pretty clunky first quarter themselves. And you just can't keep, shooting yourself in the foot, giving them chances. So it's looking bad right now.
Yeah, all three judges right now are favoring the Boston Celtics to win this one. Speaking of fights that end by decision, nobody had Ryan Garcia over Devin Haney in the big boxing match last Saturday night. Now, I say nobody. If you did, congratulations, because that ticket made you a lot of money. Ryan Garcia to win the fight made you a lot of money. If you had him to win by the cards, it was 16-1 at BetMGM. How surprised are you that the fight went the way it did?
I mean, very, very surprised that he ended up winning a decision against Devin Haney. Like, if you would have told me the least likely outcomes going into that fight, that would have been the one. Like, I thought the odds reflected that well. If you would have told me that he would have caught him with a knockout, yeah, I would have been pretty surprised just based on how he was acting. But, I mean, look, this man seems like a master mind and troll and all this, and we discussed that in the lead-up, is like, do we believe this? Is it all a disaster? Or is this an act? What is this from him? And it seemed like everything was very much played in the right way. Devin Haney's camp, didn't have like these clauses that he had in the Gervonta Davis camp of having to make a certain weight. And so, I mean, he looked 3 weight classes bigger than Devin Haney in that fight, which, definitely panned out when it came to the power shots. And honestly, Sean probably should have had a knockout in the middle of that fight.
Do you think it says maybe we overrated Devin Haney? Does it say that the weight mattered that much? Does it say maybe we underrated Ryan Garcia a little bit? Like, what do we make of that fight? Because now that it's a week removed, I'm still stunned that happened. Like you said, if Ryan Garcia would have knocked him out, and he knocked him down a couple of times, I wouldn't be shocked. Of course, he has that capability. But everybody that watched that Tank Davis fight, he was getting beat up. Right? Like, yeah, he ultimately ended up taking the liver shot and going down and getting the KO. He was going to lose that fight. He dominated last Saturday against Devin Haney. I actually am of the mindset that maybe Ryan Garcia is kind of good.
Yeah, no, listen, he definitely showed, first of all, I think what he showed is he's a wild man. He's a wild fighter. He's got tremendous hand speed. I think that, we've seen plenty of, we've seen plenty of guys who are a little bit wild out of the cage, and when they get, or wild out of the cage, wild out of the ring, and they get in that ring and they can just execute. And I think Devin Haney, I think overrated is probably a little bit. I mean, there were some pretty crazy comparisons of saying, he was going to be maybe the next heir apparent to Floyd Mayweather. And, that very clearly, he just, the thing with him is he just couldn't hit Ryan with anything. I think you could probably mention that one punch, that left hook that he had in like the 3rd or 4th round. And then other than that, really just couldn't deter him, couldn't bother him. Ryan really didn't respect it and just had these spurts. And once that left hook hit, and he hit him immediately in the first round with it, he was in a dangerous spot.
The obvious question now is what's next for Ryan Garcia, because he's 25 years old, and most of the time, guys that young, superstars, especially from the YouTube era, if you will, they don't usually fight names like Gervonta Davis, let alone back-to-back against Devin Haney. Now that you're fighting the biggest names possible, who's the name that comes to mind next?
Yeah, it's a great question. He's been doing a lot, no surprise, a lot of chatting this week, and it appears like the one that interests him the most is taking on Errol Spence, because there appears to be some kind of beef with Derek James, who's his trainer. Yeah, that'd be a monster fight. I mean, Errol Spence is kind of sitting here. Terrence Crawford has moved on to greener pastures. So if he's looking for, a bounce back fight, that's obviously one more big money fight for Errol Spence if you want to do that. I don't think the Tank Davis fight's going to happen soon. He's got a fight coming up in June in Las Vegas against Frank Martin. And I think one thing that you will see is, look, if Ryan's going to fight him again, he's not going to fight him again with that rehydration clause. So, I think that would be the only way you could get a Tank versus Ryan Garcia too. But obviously, there's a lot of juice there, and they did great business. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just don't know if we'll see it soon.
What do you make of the boxing crossover talk with him fighting the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley? Both those guys obviously have a huge, huge following. They've had each other's names in their mouth now multiple times. And now that Ryan Garcia's name is white hot and O'Malley's a champion, you want to talk about making money. It feels like Dana, he's done it before back in the day with Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. You're shaking your head.
There's one issue. He's represented by Oscar De La Hoya. And, I just don't think Dana White in any shape or form is going to do anything that makes Oscar De La Hoya money, let alone giving him one of his fighters, and probably is going to have that fighter lose. So that to me is the biggest issue. Could we see it one day when Ryan Garcia is free of Golden Boy? There's been contractual disputes and spats between them. Yeah, that maybe one day, but I don't think it's anytime soon.
Let him box on the undercard. All right, De La Hoya would beat him up in a boxing ring. I'm just saying, come on, that would be so much fun. Brendan Tobin, Sports Machine, Sean Levine on a Saturday night, talking a little fighting and making a little money right here on the BetQL network. Let's keep talking a little boxing. A bunch of big fights coming up on the horizon. May 4th, of course, Cinco de Mayo weekend. Canelo almost always fights. He's going at it with Jaime Munguia, plus 425 for the underdog. Canelo's minus 600. I love Canelo Alvarez, and he is one of the faces of boxing of this generation. Is he still a minus 600 good?
Well, probably against Jaime Munguia, I can understand that, because he's not he's not going to evade Canelo Alvarez. And usually if you go into a fight where there's a couple of brawlers, like, Canelo is going to get the better end of that. Usually when we say who's going to give Canelo Alvarez problems, it's usually a guy who is, got the better, slicker skill set, a la a Dimitri Bivol, a Floyd Mayweather, Andy Lara, on Austin Trout. So I think that's probably about right. Munguia, this is his big come up. But the thing that's a little bit, of a downer to everybody for Canelo is, to your point, he is probably one of the faces of boxing still, yes, but probably fighting like the fourth most interesting fight that everybody wants to see. We want to all see him fight David Benavidez, or we want to see him fight Terrence Crawford, and he doesn't seem really keen on anything. And look, he's fought a lot of names in his career. He's fought Gennady Golovkin a bunch of times. He's fought Floyd Mayweather. He's fought, and gone up to big weight classes. So I don't want to pile on his career. He's had a great career, but when you are the face of boxing and you see all the young guys doing it right now, and Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis and Devin Haney, well, why can't the face of Tyson Fury is going to, fight all these guys? Why can't the so-called face of boxing go in there and fight one of the fights that we want to see? And his reasoning just seems kind of lame, because it's like, well, David Benavidez, what do I get out of that? Okay, David Benavidez is too big? Fine. Why won't you fight Terrence Crawford? Well, he's too small. I won't get any credit. It's like, well, all right, so you're just going to be in your little Goldilocks land of what's just right, but what's just right is the least interesting.
You're describing, as you're talking, Manny Pacquiao. He was the same way, picking and choosing, and then he got a big fight, and then he would fight a Jeff Horn, and then, okay, I'm finally ready to fight Floyd Mayweather. Wasn't it kind of the same thing for him? That's, again, why you have to go back to Ryan Garcia and give him credit, because he could easily slow roll this thing. He could fight a bunch of dudes that nobody's heard of, make a bunch of money, sell out arenas, and then 3 years from now fight Tank Davis. He did that a year ago, and now he's fighting Devin Haney, and now he's talking about Bud Crawford. I love it.
Yeah, I don't know if the Pacquiao comparison's a great one for him right now, just because I know Pacquiao was, coming off the Marquez knockout and all that, so it was kind of a slow roll after the whole Floyd chapter was closed and whatnot. But it's just, for me right now, I just think with Canelo, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to fight Bivol and avenge that? No. Okay. Do you want to fight David Benavidez, have the super fight? No. All right. I'm going to give a nice fight. Hey, two Mexican fighters, Cinco de Mayo weekend. It's going to be entertaining. I don't think it's going to be a boring fight. I think these guys are going to come and bang and slug it out, but it does have a little bit of a feel of all right, well, but what are you going to do after this? Like, what is the next real case? And the thing with Canelo is he has a huge guarantee of money. So if you remember in the lead up to this fight, like he broke off from Premier Boxing Champions, and then like he was going to go back with another promoter, and then we went back to Amazon for this fight. So it's like everybody else is kind of feeling the same way too, I think, who know they have to fork over a lot of dough to get Canelo in the ring.
There's another guy coming up fighting in May 18th for the heavyweight title that we've also got questions about. Is he still in his prime? Of course, I'm talking about the Gypsy King Tyson Fury taking on Usyk, and Usyk is slick, and Usyk is athletic, and Usyk right now is the favorite to win the fight. And I got to tell you, I'm not that surprised. I think a lot of people remember the last time out for Tyson Fury, obviously getting in there against Francis Ngannou, and we all think Ngannou won the fight, and then we saw what happened the next time Ngannou went into the ring, and it didn't work out well for him. So it's easy to look at Tyson Fury and go, okay, by my fight math, maybe he's a little bit on the back end of his career. You've pointed out a million times that maybe he wasn't taking it too seriously, and even by Tyson Fury standards, he was a little pudgy, let's just say. I don't know if you've seen recent photos of him. Dude looks jacked. Like, he looks like he's ready to fight Usyk tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like a little bit of, hey, if you are still down him, okay, that's fine, but I'm not going to overplay it too much with Usyk, just because I do think that Tyson Fury has shown, man, the guy's got great skill. He knows how to use his size. Yeah, he definitely went in there with Francis Ngannou and took it light, and he paid the price. And it was very embarrassing. It got even more embarrassing after what Anthony Joshua did to Francis Ngannou. That's not enough for me to stay away from this fight and not bet on him. I mean, he's not really in a lot of danger fighting Usyk to lose by knockout. He could lose a decision, but I think that if you ask me between his size, the ability to use to not really be in as much danger as AJ was, I think I'd still put my money on Fury going into that one.
Also in May, man, May is a loaded month for boxing, as usually is. This summer is going to be crazy inside the ring. Vasily Lomachenko steps back in against George Ferocious Kambosos. That one for the lightweight title. I don't really know where to put my money on that one. What say you?
Yeah, that's a big one for George Kambosos because
Huge.
he's coming off of two. He's coming off the losses to Devin Haney, and had this crazy upset where he beat Teofimo Lopez and got the championship, and then to his credit, didn't duck anybody. Went like right. He was supposed to fight Lomachenko originally, then the Ukraine situation and war happened, so Lomachenko left, and they went to the Devin Haney thing, and so they had the two fights with him. So this is getting back to an original matchup. I'd still lean Lomachenko though. He's very, very dangerous. Very elusive. I think he's going to frustrate George Kambosos. And I love George. I've gotten a chance to speak with him a bunch of times when he used to train down here in South Florida. But I think this one's a little bit too much of a mystery for him to figure out.
Yeah, that jab from Lomo is tough to figure out. And then in July, we've got a couple of other fights. Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. And then is Masvidal Diaz, is that in the 305? Where's that one going down?
No, I think it's in L.A. It's in L.A.
Is it?
I was surprised by that, too. I thought they would have put it down here. Or I thought it would have either been in Stockton or I thought it would have been in Miami, and it's in neither. It's in Southern California.
Of course, this one being
weird,
a rematch of... It is weird. It's the original BMF fight. I'm down for it, though, because a lot of times it feels like when we get these fights after, it's 3 years, 5 years. I mean, Nate Diaz, I think at some point is going to be back in the UFC, and Jorge Masvidal is, a year removed from his retirement. So both these guys still can throw hands, obviously. I think I like the underdog in that one, Nate Diaz. Why is Masvidal such a heavy favorite?
I mean, he beat him, that's one thing. And it's not like it's not like Nate Diaz looked fantastic in his matchup against it. But yeah, it is a little bit weird. Like, these guys get to go do this. And it was interesting with Jorge on the show last week. He was like, well, I got basically a deal with the UFC where if I get to do boxing, I promise I'll come back and fight. So that was pretty interesting. With Miami being now on the annual stop block, I'd imagine he's going to make his return probably next spring in the UFC, it sounds like.
All right, we get out of the boxing ring and step into the octagon. Coming up next, we're going to talk some UFC with Dylan Rush from Rush MMA as he joins the show. Appreciate you checking us out. It's Tapped Out right here on the BetQL Network.
More Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
And we roll along this Saturday night right here on the BetQL Network. Tapped Out is the name of the show. That's Brendan Tobin. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. And now let's welcome on friend of the show, Dylan Rush from Rush MMA. Before we look forward, Dylan, let's take a look back at UFC 300. Of course, in the main event, Alex Pereira knocked out Jamal Hill. If you could see Alex Pereira fight anybody at any weight class at this point, because that dude's scary and fun to watch, who would be your dream opponent?
Light heavyweight champ Alex Pereira, but if it's not Tom Aspinall, I mean, even if it could be Tom Aspinall, my real dream fight, John Jones. I don't know who wouldn't want to see Alex Pereira, this guy with the touch of death in his fists, taking on the GOAT, John Jones, for the heavyweight championship. Chance to become triple champ, that would be a good one.
All right, then dream with me, and let's say we actually got that fight. It's a pick 'em. Where are you putting your money?
So it's hard to say because nobody seems to want to wrestle Alex Pereira, even though that's, of course, like the glaring hole in his game. I think if there's anyone that would incorporate the wrestling and do it well and get Pereira to the ground and submit him, I think it would be John Jones. So I would have to go with the GOAT. I would back John Jones in that one.
Rush, since we're on the topic of the GOAT, how much interest do you still have in him fighting Stipe? You know, with the whole injury thing and knowing the age of the two guys, like, has that worn off for you as well? Because it is a legacy fight, and we don't get many of those in the sport. Or do you want him to move on to a younger challenge, either it be Aspinall or it be Poatan?
Yeah, I have less interest in that fight than I ever have. I think the only reason that they're clinging on to it so much is that maybe Dana promised Stipe, and maybe like they just want to give Stipe one last fight before he maybe moves on and retires, goes to firefighting full time. But yeah, I would definitely be more interested in seeing John Jones fight the likes of Aspinall or Alex Pereira.
While we're talking about your interest level with all-time favorite fighters, Conor McGregor, of course, is actually going to come back. Fingers crossed. We're going to see the fight coming up late this summer against Michael Chandler. What's your interest level in that fight with McGregor at this point? And do you think we know what Conor McGregor is going to look like inside the octagon? Because last time we saw him, his ankle was on sideways.
Mm-hmm. Whatever we think we know, we probably don't know. I have no idea what to expect in that one. I'm still going back and forth on who I think should be the favorite, who I think is going to win that fight. I definitely have more interest in that fight than the Jones fight, not only because, I mean, even though John Jones is the greatest of all time, of course, Conor's a different animal. There's only one Conor McGregor, but that fight, it's still like, I don't know, it's a bit more relevant. The winner of this fight might get a title shot. I'm pretty sure in the John Jones fight that he's just going to run through Stipe. I'd be shocked if he didn't. But I'm definitely still very much interested in this fight, even though it should have probably happened a few months ago, maybe a year ago at this point. But I'm leaning with the Mac, the return of the Mac. I think Conor McGregor gets the job done. I think he knocks out Chandler in that and within the distance. Yep.
One of his former rivals in Dustin Poirier, the man he last fought, the Guts, is after his great performance down here in Miami, has set himself up for a title shot against Islam. You think Dustin's got the chance to finally get it done and have the last accomplishment really in his career of becoming undisputed champ? What do you like about his chances in this one?
I mean, he definitely has a chance, man. And like, what is this? His third shot, fourth shot, probably his third shot at undisputed gold. He's done everything there is. He's accomplished everything there is to accomplish within the sport. He has such a great legacy, no doubt, undisputed Hall of Famer. But he is missing this one thing, this lightweight championship belt. I think he has a chance, man. But like I said about John Jones, there's nobody I would really put over Islam in the lightweight division right now. If I were to bet who's going to be champion January 1st, 2025, the lightweight division, I would go with Islam Makhachev. So it's less against Dustin and more, I think Islam is a dominant champ, and I think he's going to show that again on June 1st in Newark.
Talk a little fighting with our guy Dylan Rush of Rush MMA here on Tapped Out. Speaking of Islam, at what point do we start to say maybe he's better than Khabib? Because I think it's kind of getting there.
It's definitely getting there. I think he needs to take out a few more contenders. Khabib, of course, he did retire very early, but he did take out Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, a few other guys. Islam now, he's still only fought, I think, one top 5 lightweight in the last 9 years, being Charles Oliveira. Of course, he did take out Arman Tsarukyan, but that was Tsarukyan's debut, short notice. I think that fight could go differently this time around, who knows? But I think Islam, he racks up maybe 2, 3 more wins at lightweight, and we start talking about him as the greatest lightweight of all time.
Speaking of best divisions of all time, Max Holloway, may get another crack to reclaim his featherweight championship. If you were Max Holloway in his position, he's been saying, I got options. What path would you go? Is it Topuria? Is that the obvious answer, or is there something that interests you more for Blessed?
Well, if I'm any fighter that has any chance of fighting Conor McGregor, I take that chance. Of course, the payday would be unreal. So if I'm Max Holloway, my first choice would be that Conor McGregor fight if he's able to come back and win in June. That being a little bit less likely, I would go for the Topuria fight as opposed to, rather than staying at lightweight, I would go back down to featherweight. I think Ilir Topuria is becoming the most annoying champion there is right now. He's rejecting fights, like trying to call the shots and whatnot. But I think, he hasn't defended the belt once. I'm sure Volk probably will get a rematch. Ortega's right there. Maybe they do Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling, which leads to maybe an opening for Max Holloway to get that title shot. But like you said, he has options. I'm very, very excited to see what they do next for Max Holloway.
Speaking of Dylan, fighters with options, Sean O'Malley now has the belt. He's now defended the belt. Looking back on it, like if you could jump in your hot tub time machine a few years ago, is he better than you thought? Is this kind of what you expected? What's your take on O'Malley right now?
Yeah, it depends where we hop back to, because definitely at the beginning, I wouldn't say I was a hater, but I was like, I don't see it. Like, he's exciting. He has a flashy style. I like him, but like, I didn't think he was a championship caliber fighter. Back in October of what year? 2022, I believe, when he fought Piotr Jan in Abu Dhabi. I definitely didn't give him the credit, the chance that he had in that fight. I thought Piotr Jan was going to make it look easy. Of course, Sean O'Malley went on to win that fight before winning the title over Aljamain Sterling. So he's definitely better than I expected. Again, I was counting him out against Sterling. I did think he was going to beat Cheeto, but in this fight against Merab, maybe I'll be proven wrong again. I would love to be proven wrong, but I'm going to back Merab. If they make that fight, Merab versus Sean O'Malley, I think Merab would win the championship there.
And it feels like for him, like that's gonna answer everything there. But like for Merab, what are the things about this in that matchup particularly that you think are going to give Sean a lot of issues? Because Merab just looks so damn dominant every time he stepped in there.
Merab has definitely been training for Sean O'Malley for so long. Even when Aljamain was in camp to fight Sean O'Malley, of course, Merab was either emulating Sean O'Malley, which would be hard to do just because of the skill, the size difference, the style difference. But he was training with Aljo for Sean O'Malley. He's had his eyes on the championship, had his eyes probably on O'Malley for a long time now. And of course, we can't talk about Merab without talking about the cardio, without the wrestling. He's nicknamed the Machine for a reason. I have never seen anyone attempt as many takedowns in a 3-round fight, or was it 5 rounds maybe? But I've never seen someone attempt so many takedowns against any fighter than Merab against Piotr Jan. That was insane. And even though Piotr Jan was defending, he did a great job. Merab still won that fight with the unrelenting pressure. I think he does the same thing against O'Malley. I think he's just got to do one thing, which is avoid what Sterling did. Don't rush it. Take your time. And once he gets we haven't really seen Sugar on the ground yet. So once he gets Sugar down, I would expect him to submit him. But who knows? Maybe Sugar has that BJJ defense or offense. Maybe throws up a submission. Who knows?
Well, we know he can knock you out. And now we know that Max Holloway, he's knocking people out like he's Mike Tyson, right? He got the BMF belt against Gaethje. He knocked out the Zombie. Both those were really fun fights. Now that we're a couple of weeks removed from it, because a lot of people, fight fans and otherwise, were sitting in front of their TVs for UFC 300. Joe Rogan immediately called it, that's the greatest knockout of all time. I've rewatched it a bunch. It was a huge card. It was the most popular fight probably on the card, and it finished with 1 second left. It wasn't necessarily as cool looking as a knockout as McGregor versus Aldo or anything like that. Now that we're a couple of weeks removed from it, where do you have that fight? Where do you have that knockout in the pantheon of things?
It's so hard to say, man, because of the things you just said. Like when you're talking about the greatest knockout of all time, the looks go into it, but also the moment, the timing of the fight. Is there a championship on the line? Is it the biggest card of all time? And for a lot of those things, the answer is yes for this knockout. It was the biggest card of all time, probably with 1 second left. Like what's better than that? Looks wise, of course, like it wasn't Joaquin Buckley versus Impa Castagne. It wasn't a catch the kick, spinning head kick knockout like that. Like that to me is the coolest knockout. But best knockout of all time, I think it's right up there with Connor and Aldo. Like Connor, that moment winning the title 13 seconds in. I mean, how could you beat that? But this with the 1 second left, I think the fact is that a lot of people have said like it's different if he was down. Even if he was down, it'd be cool. I put this one above Leon and Kamaru because I think it's cooler that in the last 10 seconds when you're up arguably 3 or 4 rounds, you're still going for the knockout. You still want the finish despite the fact that you could just let the last 10 seconds coast. A lot of people run around the ring, put their hands up and whatnot. But the fact that he was going to win that fight no matter what, and he still said, pointed to the ground, said, let's do this against Justin Gaethje. This isn't against like freaking Ronnie Yaya, Victor Henry. This is Justin Gaethje. We're talking about one of the biggest KOers in the sport. So that I put it at 2. Connor, Aldo, and then that. That's what I do.
You just got the goosies again, man. You got you
I got
got
the
all
goosies
goosed up.
You give me the
Just thinking
goosies
about
too.
Look, I will give the UFC a bit of a pass on like next week's pay-per-view because the pay-per-views have been awesome. I mean, they've been awesome. So you're naturally going to have a letdown at some point on the card. But like, is there something that does particularly interest you with next week? Is it Pantoja versus Usyk? Because I just feel like Usyk is so burst on. He opened up the main card last time around. So, what excites you the most about 301 next week?
I think this card is saved if Usyk wins. I think if Usyk wins, for the casual fans, the diehard fans, all the fans, like not that everyone's rooting for him or anything, but I think if Usyk wins, that shock factor, that like, oh my God, Steven Usyk, he's been in the UFC for what, 10 months? This is probably his 4th or 5th fight in the UFC, and now he's the champion. I think that shock factor and that like, who is this kid, Astro Boy? I think that would save the card. I think another thing that would save the card is if, regardless of who wins between Usyk and Pantoja, everyone starts walking out, the main event's over, blah, blah, blah. Then the lights go off. You hear Poetan's music come on. He comes out and fights Yuri Prohaska. Obviously, this isn't going to happen, guys, but I think that would save 301. I think that would be pretty
Like
awesome.
a saved WrestleMania?
Yeah, like WrestleMania type.
Like a Royal Rumble? Yeah.
Poetan just appears in the ring like Undertaker.
You know what?
I suppose if
go ahead, BT.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I suppose if Aldo does, if Aldo has a moment in Brazil, like that's always gonna be amazing. That's definitely gonna be something we can all look forward to because, it's an absolute legend every time he steps into the ring. It means something, but I agree with you. Like that's probably with your take. I don't know if anything else could be as exciting as that.
On paper, yeah, the card kind of stinks, but usually what ends up happening is there's a bunch of awesome knockouts, a couple of cool submissions, the fight of the year. We end up winning a bunch of money and hit some parlays. So we'll still dive deep into it here on Tapped Out. But spinning the wheels forward as far as main events go, we got a couple of minutes left with our guest Dylan Rush here on Tapped Out. 303, Jamal Hill, Khalil Roundtree. 304 looks like it's going to be Cyril Gane, Tom Aspinall. Give me some winners here.
I'm going Jamal Hill knockout, and I'm going Tom Aspinall. I don't know how he's going to win, but he's going to win. Maybe decision. Maybe knockout, maybe decision. I would probably go I'd go knockout. I'd go Aspinall knockout, and I'd go Jamal Hill knockout.
Yeah. Is there any level of you though that has concern that Jamal's coming back to? I mean, that was a vicious KO, dude. Like, is there any concern level, or do you feel like he's just a level above Roundtree, so this is a safe return for him?
It's tough because I do think he is a level above Roundtree, but I do agree with you. I think this is a little too soon. I can't speak to it as much. I've never gotten in the cage. I don't know how this stuff goes, but like based on what I've seen, based on the past, like it is a little soon after going down, getting knocked out like that. But even though that knockout was pretty bad, it wasn't like awful. Like if it was like Gaethje coming back, I feel like that knockout was a lot worse, especially after taking the damage Gaethje took earlier in that fight. Like if Gaethje said he was coming back in June, I think the whole world would be up in arms. Like, please do not let him come back in June. So I think it's a little early, but I still think Jamal Hill gets the job done. Not to take anything away from Roundtree, because I think this is a great fight. This is one of the best fights they could have booked. Roundtree is one of the best 205ers in the world, but I do think Jamal Hill, he's got that power. Even if he's losing the fight early on, I see him getting maybe a late second round knockout in this one for sweet dreams.
Before we get out of here, speaking of Justin Gaethje, of course, he got knocked out by Max Holloway in the BMF fight. If I set the over-under for more fights in his career inside the octagon at 3.5,
Under.
what are you playing? Under?
Under.
So we're about done with Gaethje, yeah. I was kind of thinking the same thing. We might only see him a couple of more times. But you'll see Dylan Rush plenty more times right here on Tapped Out. Great stuff as always, brother. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, man. Thank you, guys.
It's going to be sad, man, when we don't see Justin Gaethje anymore, BT, because he's one of those guys. It took him a while to get in the promotion, became a fan favorite, had a bunch of highlights, fought the best dudes, but we knew that it was going to come to an end quick, and the truth is we kind of might be getting there, man.
You're like the Undertaker, dude. You're ready to bury everybody's career. This guy's coming off a head kick against Dustin Poirier. You're already kicking him out of the UFC.
I'm just saying. I mean, he's also coming off a tough knockout. Maybe I'm wrong, but I said the same thing about Cowboy. I was right. I said the same thing about Ferguson. I was right. Get out before it's too late is all I'm saying. Coming up next, we talk more fighting and we make more money right here on the BetQL Network.
Or Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Welcome back into the show. Fights are going on right now. UFC 91 heading into round 3 between JSP, that's Jonathan Pierce. He's the favorite at minus 160 against David Onama, the underdog at plus 130. According to at least my producer, Jake Noecker, that's 1 round apiece going into the third. I've got some money on the underdog Onama, so I'm kind of watching that one out of the corner of my eye. Still coming up, the co-main and then the main event. That's Alex Perez and Matthias Nicolau. We'll talk about that here momentarily. And then we'll talk about UFC 301, which, like BT said, you can expect it to be a little bit of an underwhelming pay-per-view after the proclaimed greatest combat card of all time that was UFC 300. But first, boys, a story. So I was swiping left and I was swiping right, and this girl caught my attention because one of her photos, she was with Robert Whittaker, and in another photo, she was with Dustin Poirier. And so I thought, okay, what a great opening line. I'm going to be able to send to her, hey, I like your picture with the Diamond and the Reaper, throwing in some nicknames there. And she's going to be like, oh, this guy likes MMA. And then I'm going to say, hey, yeah, actually, you know what? I host the best sporting MMA show on the radio with my boys Tobin and Jake. It's called Tapped Out right here on the BetQL Network. I thought all this was going to play in my favor, right? So she then said, can I get a recent picture? Because I guess my pictures are a little bit old. I don't change them much on that whole swipe left, swipe right thing. And so I sent her a couple of recent photos. And she has the audacity to say, look, I know I'm no supermodel. This woman sends me back a message that says, I don't want to ghost you, but I'm not attracted to you. Enjoy the fights.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
wow.
Couldn't you have just ghosted me? Couldn't you have just let it go? And I'm not going to let that go. I'm too shallow. So I respond
You would have preferred would you have preferred the ghost?
Oh, 1,000,000%. Yeah. Just pretend like your phone broke. Pretend like the app doesn't work. Just delete me, whatever. I'll get the point myself. You don't have to tell me I'm ugly, which you essentially did.
Damn.
So I respond back. I said, no need to apologize. It's just weird, though, because tomorrow I've got my photo shoot for the People's Sexiest Man of the Year. Then she texts back and says, ha, 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 actually, I like a guy with a good sense of humor. Maybe we can make this work. And now she's coming over after the show. So as my friends, I ask you guys.
Attaboy.
I ask you guys this. What do I do? What's my next move? Because, yeah, she thinks I'm funny, which I am. But she also thinks I'm ugly. She's let me know this before we go out. What do I do?
First of all, maybe it was an ugly picture. I don't know what the picture, maybe I don't exactly look at you as an Instagram model who knows how to get the lighting right and everything. Look, dude, you're in. Like, I don't know. What are you complaining about? You're in. She's coming over for a hangout session. I don't understand what the problem is. Who cares if she thinks you're ugly? Go win her over with some chuckles.
Yeah, that's easy for you to say. You've got the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. Jimmy Butler himself told you so. Look at me, dude. I look like a combination of Uncle Fester and Dana White right now. Producer Jake said, go brush your teeth, take a shower, and we'll take over the show from here. All right.
I'm with you. Just be cleanly.
I'll get through
Just be
show.
cleanly.
Thanks, guys. That's what I needed. These are my guys here on the BetQL Network. I love these guys. All right. Can you guys help me make some money? Onama and JSP going into the third round. It's basically even. BT, tell me you like Onama because that's where I've already got my money.
I liked Onama because I know that's your guy. So I mean, like when you told me that you were in on him, I'm like, all right, cool. But You know, I don't feel great about it after that second round. He's going to need to do something here, dude. He needs to get it going in this final frame. I do feel pretty strongly, and there's not a lot of money to be made in it, but Janata Diniz against Austin Lane. Austin Lane, I mean, like, that dude's chin has been on a tee. I mean, he's most known for, I think, the guy who got knocked out by Greg Hardy that basically got Greg Hardy in the UFC. Then he got just knocked out by Tafa after he was supposed to fight Tafa, and then, you know, he had the old eye poke thing. So Denise has been knocking people out left and right, but, you know, it's not great though. It's like minus 100 on it. I think I put it into, what was the thing? I think it was first round KO is like minus 140, which would tell you everybody thinks he's going to just blast him.
Yeah, the chin is questionable, and I don't see that one going either way a whole lot longer than the first round. I've also got Ryan Spann in the co-main by knockout, only because you told me to do so, at minus 135. Actually, you're waffling a little bit. How do you think this fight's going to end? I know you like Superman.
No, I didn't waffle. I just took him by KO or sub because I just feel like he's going to finish the fight. So I'm just like, I don't know. I think he'll find a finish somewhere. You know, Spann can be. I think he can be a little bit of a wild card sometimes on the way he's doing it when he gets wins, but he can get finishes in a multiple amount of ways. He did. I feel like he got the short end of that Anthony Smith decision the last time around, so I don't think like he's in as rough a spot, but I think he's in a good place right now where he can get this one.
I'm not waffling, but I don't know if he's going to win by decision or by knockout, or if he's going to choke him out in the main event.
I said KO or sub. I didn't say by decision.
Okay, I mean, inside the distance. I get it. Sorry, I've got a date tonight. I'm a little bit nervous now. What do you want from me? She already told me I'm ugly, dude. Like, it's not off to a great start.
Well, I think Alex it is Perez. Off to a great start. The fact that you got a date off of, the fact that you have her coming over in spite of the fact that she thought you were initially ugly, but you won her over with charm and sense of humor. That's great, bro. That's the way that, if anything, like looks, they're gonna come and go, but you'll be able to make her laugh till she's 80.
Dude, now I feel great about myself, and I'm gonna dress as ugly as possible. I've got a hyper-color shirt from like 1989 that still changes colors that doesn't fit me, and it's got holes in it because it's the one I mow the lawn in. She thinks I'm ugly in my pictures. Wait till she sees these jean shorts and flip-flops, and it's pouring rain here, boy. Oh, tonight's going to be fun. I appreciate you guys pumping me up, though. All right, main event, minus 185, the favorite, Matthias Nicolau, coming up probably about 20, 30 minutes from now against Alex Perez. I like the underdog at plus 150.
I like Nicolau just because I'm worried about Perez. This is a short notice step in for him. This is supposed to be Manel Kopp, and I mean that's too far. This fight's been cursed, so they haven't been able to get this matchup going. So I'm a little worried about Perez stepping in here. He's been on a little bit of a rough patch, but I mean he's been losing to some really talented guys: Figueiredo, Pantoja, Makaev. Like he's lost to a lot of the top dudes in this division. So maybe he thinks to himself, "Hey, I got an opportunity to get things right here on the up and up." But I'm rocking with Nicolau to get this going for tonight's main event.
Is Manel Kopp the most unreliable fighter right now in the entire UFC? Like,
yeah, I think probably.
Well, I mean, why even book that, dude? I think I saw it was like the 7th fight that he's missed so far that he was supposed to be in. A couple of those, of course, headlining also. Jake says the ending to that fight was insane. Care to give us any details, producer Jake, at the end of that JSP Onama fight? What happened?
I got pizza all over my face, so you just got to deal with my voice. But no, they just started swinging the center of the octagon, 15 seconds, throwing hooks, landing hooks, mouth guards flying, spit flying. They were both standing, but the Max Holloway effect was in full force. It was awesome.
Love it. And we've seen Onama getting those type of fights before. That's basically what happened to end the fight against my boy, Nate the Train Landwehr. I don't know if you've heard, but Nate the Train in the UFC. Speaking of UFC, 301 is coming up right around the corner, and it's not a great card. Pantoja versus Usyk is the main event. Pantoja, the champion, the favorite, at minus 250. Usyk, the underdog, at plus 200. He's a tricky fighter. Pantoja's been on a little bit of a roll. You could pretty easily talk me into that 2-1 underdog money on Usyk.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same way. This this flyweight division has been a pretty even division. I think it's tough to ask, a flyweight to rely, Usyk on his power that he's going to come in there and go knock out the champ. But, I mean, like he's probably feeling himself pretty good with what he just did against Matt Schnell. So I think I'm going to just roll with the dog too and see where it's at that night.
Then the co-main event, my boy Jose Aldo Jr. It's crazy to think that he's still co-maining event pay-per-views, but that's where we're at. I don't know if that talks about the oversaturation of these cards at this point or the fact that this guy just keeps on ticking like the Energizer Bunny. Takes on Jonathan Martinez, essentially a pick'em fight. Every time Aldo fights at this point, I'm just waiting for him to lay down the gloves at the end, right? Like we were talking about how much longer does Gaethje have? You kind of have to ask the same question about the greatest featherweight of all time, Jose Aldo Jr.
Yeah, I mean, like he's finally like maybe at an age we all think is appropriate, where he's going to be 38 in the fall. I'm like, all right, that finally feels right because he should be, he probably should be like 45. But I mean, like how bad can we get on him? Like he was on a 3-fight win streak before, losing to Merab. Merab is arguably the most dominant guy in the division right now. So I'm looking forward to it, anytime. But I do think to your point, like anytime you have a guy of his age and you don't know how many more he's got left in the sport, and he's going to be in his homeland for this one. So you obviously want to appreciate moments like this because they're meaningful. They're meaningful for a guy who's done all he's done.
And think about what we just saw really in the last calendar year and a half with no more Cowboy Cerrone, right? No more Robbie Lawler, these all-time greats. It's going to be sad in the next few years when we're saying the same thing about Justin Gaethje, and I don't know how much longer a Dustin Poirier has, and even the great Conor McGregor. We just talked about Jose Aldo. John Jones' days are numbered. I don't know if we ever see Stipe step into the octagon again. On the women's side, man, we've lost probably all of the most popular fighters in the last year and a half calendar as far as the Joanna Jaceks and the Amanda Nunes. Obviously, when one door closes, another one opens. That's why I think it was smart for Bo Nickel to be on that main card, because at some point we got to figure out kind of who the next generation of champions are, because all these greats that we love aren't going to be around here in a few years.
No, absolutely. Like it's also rare that they get the great ending, like our guy Robbie Lawler did, when it usually goes like Cowboy does. It usually goes where you're getting the tough loss. So if he is able to get a couple of wins, and I don't know if he'll be able to do enough outside of something short notice to ever get back in the title picture again, but every time he should fight, it's a meaningful thing because he's done a lot for the lower weight classes.
I think if Poirier knocks out Islam coming up, there's a chance that he lays down the gloves. But we can talk about that because we've got one more hour coming up on the other side. Keep it right here. It's Tapped Out on the BetQL Network.
On the BetQL Network.
You know the rules. I want a good, clean fight. When I tell you to break, I want you to step back out my command and break. Now go back to the corner and come out fighting at the bell.
Goodness, how many times do I have to fight this guy? I mean, at this point, it's like Max Holloway and Volkanovski. I beat him every single week, and then he keeps coming back. So here we go again. Segment's called "You're Gonna Fight Me," Brendan Tobin and me, the sports machine, Sean Levine. Speaking of Max Holloway, I'm starting to think that Max is going to be champion again. Like, he's knocking everybody out. Everybody loves him. Dana loves him, so he's going to get a chance. You're going to fight me if I say Max Holloway, blessed, is going to be best again. He's going to have the belt.
I'm not going to fight you on that because I think there are plenty of combinations that get him there. There are also plenty of ones that could give him trouble. Like if Volkanovski wins the rematch against Topuria, I guess that means we got to go to a trilogy if Topuria gets his mind around whoever the hell he does want to fight. But if he fights Topuria, no, I like Max Holloway, man. I think that the young gun's going to be in for a rude awakening with what he's able to do. I think I just got to give the nod to Volk because stylistically he's just had the rivalry. But man, what he had that moment, whether he wins the belt or doesn't win the belt again, he's really just thrilled us all with so many great moments.
Already a trilogy. What would that be? A quadrilogy?
Quadrilogy.
What do you? A quadrilogy. All right, thank you. You're gonna fight me if I say I think Dustin Poirier is going to be champion again. Also, the odds are crazy. He's like a 3-4-1 underdog. He's got the fight. He's got the chance coming up at 302 against Islam Makhachev. I know DP's your boy, trains in your backyard down there in South Florida, not literally, figuratively. You're going to fight me if I say the Diamond is going to be champion. And then I also think there's a chance he retires. What say you?
Not going to fight you on it. I know one thing I'm definitely going to do is bet on him because the odds are crazy, and I think that you have to put your money on Dustin Poirier in a situation like that. He's too good. And I think we have seen, like, look, I get what you were saying earlier in the show to our boy Rush about, hey, is Islam on the route to being there with Khabib? Maybe. I still think there's more to do just because his his lead up and vault to the title was a little bit weirder than Khabib's was. But Khabib, we saw Khabib be so dominant, and I've already seen Islam nearly lose fights. So I do still think there are some things that he has to answer going into this matchup against Dustin.
One thing that I've learned about life, there's still a lot that I have to learn, but one thing I've learned is how important timing is. And I think that's the question with Khabib is, timing-wise, did he get out at the perfect time because he had already taken out Conor and Gaethje and Poirier and essentially cleared out the division at that point? Or can we point to him now and say, yeah, he's not a top 5 all-time fighter, though, because he got out when he was still in his prime? I understand we can't have it both ways, right? If we're going to crush Tony Ferguson and Donald Cerrone for the way they got out, and I would say that happens more often than not, where a fighter gets out a few fights too late, and some people look back at their career and they remember the guy or the gal, like maybe a Valentina Shevchenko or an all-time great, maybe not the fighter they actually were, and that's unfortunate. I don't hold that against Khabib. You're going to fight me if I say Khabib is a top 5 all-time fighter?
No, I'm not going to fight you on that. I think he's definitely got the credentials to be in the discussion of it for sure. Just because of how dominant he was. And I think the thing I will always hold on to about him is he looked like he was getting even better when he went out on top. Like some guys like George St. Pierre, they look like, hey, they're getting out at the right time. Even though he did come back to win the middleweight championship. There was a long break there. I'm talking about the end of his welterweight reign against Johnny Hendricks. Like you're like, he's getting out at the right time. And with Khabib,
what fighters do you think, sorry to cut you off, have left with too much gas left in the tank? Because that doesn't really happen. Like these guys pretty much, it's what they do. It's what they love to do, right? It's weird making a living getting punched in the face and choked out, but most of the time these guys hang around. I'm trying to think of somebody that got out. Maybe Amanda Nunes comes to mind.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the only boxing one I can come up with is Andre Ward. I mean, Andre Ward won undefeated, still had some options, but really, and as I've talked to him a couple of times, like he was really, really tempted to come back for some opportunities, but stayed true to his word, stayed retired, but still probably when he left was like a top 10 for sure, pound for pound fighter on the planet.
Remember when I confused Mickey Ward and Andre Ward live here on the BetQL
Sure
network?
did. Yes, I did.
That wasn't my finest moment. Yeah. Connor and Chandler going at it in a couple of months in the summertime. Fingers crossed. I say it, and I only half believe that it's actually going to happen. You're going to fight me if I say there's no way that one gets into the championship rounds. Like that one's less than 3. Wouldn't be surprised if it's done in 1.
I'm not going to fight you on that. You've been making some good points today. I got to be honest with you. But no, I mean, I would be pretty surprised just because I don't know what Connor's going to look like. I don't know what that gas tank is going to use. He's a guy who notoriously doesn't really usually have a good gas tank. And now we're talking years off, injuries, unless he's just been doing a lot of cardio, but really it looks like he's been doing a lot of powerlifting.
He's been doing a lot of something, but I don't think it's cardio, bud.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't disagree with you. I think that one, whoever wins, I do feel like it will be inside the distance.
Yeah, I don't see that one going very long. I'm really leaning toward Chandler by knockout in the first round. But again, it's such a wild card with Conor McGregor. maybe I would take that now that you talk about his gas tank in the second or the third. It feels like the deeper that one gets, more of an advantage for Chandler. It is weird because as great as Connor is, he's always had that same flaw every single time. I would say the third round has been kind of his bugaboo where he gets there. It's like, he's out of gas. And that's part of the reason why we love him, because he throws everything he has in those first couple of rounds. Just ask Aldo Jr. sometimes in the first handful of seconds. Anthony Smith has been talking about Alex Pereira, saying he wants to fight him one day. He could see their paths crossing. Are you going to fight me if I say he would get shredded if he stepped into an octagon against Alex Pereira? What is Anthony Smith talking about?
Look, I'll never question that guy's toughness. He really is willing to step in there with everybody. Hey, could have taken a penalty championship if he wanted to. Could have done the old Aljo against John Jones, right? But man, I mean, Pereira just looks like the scariest thing in the sport right now. And I just don't know what he's got for him, because it feels like it just feels like Anthony has taken so much punishment. That's a guy where you wonder. It's kind of been a theme of the night, like how many more do they have left? I really do wonder with Anthony, how many does he have left? Because he's been in some really, really hellacious wars and one of the tougher guys out there.
That's an issue with Anthony because he had that famous fight where, it was Glover Teixeira, right? Where his teeth were breaking, literally, during the fight. And he was talking about it. And then afterwards, he said he would have fired anybody that would have thrown in the towel in his corner. He's also got a pretty good connection with the UFC and Dana White, where he's on the desk sometimes. So you just wonder, like, who's going to be the person that's important enough to get in Anthony Smith's ear? And frankly, they keep putting him in these big fights. Like, if they're going to pay him, put him on a pay-per-view. I guess, blame Anthony Smith for going out there. But yeah, he's another one of those guys that we love. And speaking of, I remember when I asked him that question, did it ever go through your mind to just take the knee and not fight the rest of the fight against John Jones? And he said at the time, he was like, no, dude, of course. It was almost like I offended him. He was like, no, I wasn't going to win a championship that way. You'd have to think at some point over time, he's sitting in a hotel room by himself. He's in the jacuzzi, whatever. He's had to have thought, I could have been the champion and I could have beat John Jones.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, nobody liked Aljo for the way that he did it, but it turned into a pretty long reign, So, like, who's to say the next time he goes in there, he doesn't do it, but he is loved. I do think that, I don't know if he's like one of the most beloved, but I think respected is probably the better word for Anthony Smith. I think he's well respected by everybody.
Great tattoos also. And a Midwest kid from Omaha, Nebraska. Sean O'Malley, speaking of champions, looks like he's going to go at it with Merab. Still waiting on that date. I think O'Malley's going to knock him out. I know we had on Dylan Rush earlier in the show, and he took the Merab side of things. We all love Merab's coat on this show. But O'Malley, to me, like, I'm done asking questions. I think he does the same thing he did to Aljo and knocks him out.
I'm not done asking questions, but it has really nothing to do with Sean. It's just because that division is so deep. And I do think that there are a lot of guys that present style matches, and that's the fun of it. And, all this talk about jumping around and jumping divisions, like, I want to see what a long-range champion can do against different styles of guys. What, where are those weaknesses? Where are those buttons pressed? You look at a guy like Israel Adesanya, and he had to take on all types of different guys, Robert Whitaker and Pereira and Marvin Vettori and he took on everybody. And Kamaru Usman, same way. You take on all these different types of guys. So I do think Rush is right. Like, it'll be interesting to see a guy who's got something a little bit different up their sleeve for a matchup with Sean. And just, I mean, Merab's just looked untouchable lately. He really has. He's been lived up to his nickname, which he stole from you. And I don't know. I don't know if I could see that guy losing. I don't know if he's going to get knocked out. I think that he's going to win a decision over Sean. I think Sean might have his moments, but I just can't see that dude losing. He's just been an absolute tank lately.
If you missed that interview with Dylan Rush from Rush MMA, check that out. We've got Andrew Gombas actually coming up next from Bets and Picks MMA right here on the BetQL network. My boy Charles Oliveira lost to Arman Sarukian, and I'm got to be honest with you, I'm still bitter. I really am. I'm still bitter about that. I can admit
you're happy he got his money.
Yeah.
Are you happy he's got his purse held from the commission?
Oh, extremely happy. Like, I hope that Arman Sarukian, if you don't know what BT's talking about, on the walkout, Sarukian tried to punch a fan, and now they aren't paying him. They'll end up paying him. UFC does this sometimes. They hold the money over the guy's head. They're doing it right now. Actually, with Sarukian and with
Well,
Diego
the commission's
Lopez.
holding it. The UFC's not holding it. The commission is.
Correct. But almost every time, I can't think of too many examples where ultimately the guy doesn't or gal doesn't end up getting their money, because Diego Lopez, this one's even weirder. Diego Lopez won his fight, jumped over the octagon, had a few words for Dana White, got back in the octagon. Now they're withholding his money also. Like, how come some guys can't? I once saw, and I'm not talking about Khabib style, like you can't go flying eagle right at Dylan Dennis, but Jose Aldo Jr., that guy almost made it up into the second level one time when he won in Brazil. Like, what are we talking about? Why are we holding these guys money?
I don't know. It seems really stupid. Like, I think commissioners sometimes, like, they just maybe had a light meeting schedule and they're like, hey, we got to have these meetings. Otherwise, what are we paid for? So
seriously,
I'm serious. Like, you ever like go into a work meeting and you're just like, what are we doing? And it's like, it just feels like you're having a meeting to have a meeting. Like, that's what that feels like.
I hope my boss in Kansas City's not listening right now, but should I say 90% of them? Yeah. Guys walked into a meeting before. He's like, oh, glad you guys got here an hour before you usually show up. So, what do you think we could do better? It's like, really? Was there not any sort of a plan here? Did you even know this meeting was supposed to happen, boss?
I got to be honest with you. In the years that I've been doing 10 to 2, that's been probably the best perk about that is that every meeting is during 10 to 2. So I haven't gone to a meeting in 4 years.
Meetings are from 10 to 2 the same way that lunch is at noon and dinner's at 6 p.m. Like, certain things just happen at certain times. You're right. That is a benefit of doing a daytime radio. I was saying Charles Oliveira lost Arman Sarukian, and I'm still bitter about it, obviously. At this point, I'm ready to say Oliveira's not ever going to fight for the belt again. And he was I don't know if I want to say a great champion. He was a very good champion. Defended that thing for years, knocked people out, submitted people, all-time most submissions, all-time most finishes, but he's never going to fight for the belt again. You going to fight me?
Yeah, I'm going to fight you. I think he can get back to the belt. I mean, like, he almost choked out Sarukian. He was this close, dude. He was that close. I'm not going to say never. Never's a long time. Did you think Dustin Poirier was ever going to fight for the belt again?
Are you
I'm not trolling you. But, like, never, the Charles Oliveira is never going to fight for the belt again. That's crazy talk. He definitely could get back to fighting for the belt.
What if I said Conor McGregor's never going to fight for a belt again? You fight me on that?
I would fight you less on that because he doesn't win very much. But I think if anybody was going to get the pass of, hey, you win a fight, Did Austin Lane got knocked down the first round, Jake? Oh, second round. All right. Well, listen. Good for Austin Lane. Good for Austin Lane. Hey, parlays in play, dude. We need a span finish. You get that 2-to-1 parlay.
Austin Lane, man, they're just throwing that guy out there to get knocked out. It's almost getting funny.
He's a very nice man, by the way. Very, very. He's a sweetheart, but he has not had a great UFC run.
No, I'm sure he's a great guy. It's just doesn't have a great chin. I just calls him like I see him. Coming up next, friend of the show from Bets and Picks MMA, Andrew Gombas stops by right here on Tapped Out.
With Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Welcome back into the show with BT and Jake Noecker. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, talking a little fighting with you here for the next about 40 minutes, let's call it, here on the network. UFC 301 right around the corner. Tonight, UFC 91. We've still got 3 bets left, Jake, and I got a little bit of money right now in my BetQL account, so help me out here. Of the 3 bets left, what's my best bet to make some bread?
All right, so you got Lipsky and Silva, Guskov and Span, Nicolau and Perez.
I'm leaning Span, and I like his odds by knockout, right? Like, obviously, we know he can do it.
I was going to say I'm leaning Guskov by knockout, so maybe the way to go is just a knockout in that fight.
It sounds like it, and I think that's actually going to happen. I actually really like that bet. Speaking of knockouts, let's talk about some other fights that we have coming up on the horizon. UFC 304, my boy Tom Aspinall goes at it against Cyril Gane. I'm ready to say that I think that Cyril Gane is a good fighter, not a great one. I think that the heavyweight division needed somebody. He was that big, scary monster. We saw him against Francis Ngannou, But if you look at his record, not all that impressive. Am I crazy to think that Tom Aspinall just dusts that guy up?
No, I agree. I think Tom beats Cyril Gahn. Maybe there was a time and place where Cyril Gahn beat Tom Aspinall, but Cyril hasn't been very active. Tom's been more active, and what we've seen of Tom is absolutely insane. Like, he's becoming one of the best heavyweights we've ever seen. Like, Cyril Gahn had that athleticism, that crazy wrestling, grappling ability when he first came into the UFC. And now all the heavyweight division kind of has that. It's not just a bunch of fat guys throwing haymakers anymore. So I think Tom Aspinall is bigger, badder, stronger, better all around. I think he beats Cyril Gahn.
That's the thing about Tom is he's too nice of a guy. His accent is too good. You know what I'm saying? Like when he came on the show, I was mesmerized by the guy, man crush immediately. But then he just goes out there and beats up all these heavyweights. I don't think John Jones is scared to fight him. I think that John Jones is scared to lose to him because his name's not big enough. Because John has this great legacy where he's taken out all the great heavyweights and light heavyweights in his prime. And again, I think that if the name was a little bit bigger, I think if it was Stipe healthy, John would say, okay, as soon as I'm healthy, I'm ready for that fight. For whatever reason, we're never going to see him fight Tom Aspinall.
No. And I mean, I don't blame John Jones at all. You know, he's at a unique point in his career. He doesn't need to be competitive anymore. He just needs to win his last fight, walk out in the sunset. MMA has its GOAT. Bam, done. Dana White wants that. Hunter Campbell wants that. John Jones wants that. He'll never get a real fight that's a real challenge.
Honestly, then, why come back? I remember saying the same thing when he came back as a heavyweight and fought Cyril Gahn. And look, it was a very impressive win. Everybody went, oh, John's still there. He's still great. Currently, number one pound for pound fighter? Actually, maybe that's Islam, but he went to number one at the time. My point is, John is still elite, although why? Keep fighting. What's the point? We were talking about Khabib earlier, who maybe got out a little bit early. Once you clear out the entire division, in the case of Khabib, I get it. He was a little bit younger, right? He still had a little bit more tread left on the tires. If you're John Jones, there's literally nothing left to gain. Am I missing something here?
I mean, he just wants his farewell tour, you know, and I think somebody at that stature, as good as John is, as much as he's done for the sport, he deserves that farewell tour, goodbye fight, making a lot of money on a huge pay-per-view. I know Dana certainly wants that. It's going to bring in a lot of money for the UFC as well. So I don't know. I get where he's coming from. MMA has never had that. You know, NFL had Peyton Manning winning the Super Bowl last season and retiring. Beautiful. Perfect. John Jones wants that too. And Stipe is the most likely opponent to give that to him.
303, Jamal Hill takes on Khalil Roundtree. Looking back on the Jamal Hill, Alex Pereira main event, and maybe this is a little bit harsh, and maybe it's because it just happened. Jamal Hill was never going to win that fight. Like, it's crazy to think that it was basically a pick 'em. And some people say, oh, well, what about the referee, the way they separated? Pereira got in a cheap shot. Whatever. It's kind of like when we saw Poirier fight Conor McGregor last time. I was talking to my boy about that fight earlier today, and he was like, well, I'm not going to say that's a loss for Conor because we never got actually. No, dude, he was going to lose that fight. Let's be honest with ourselves. Jamal Hill was going to lose that fight no matter what happened, right?
Yeah, totally. And it's crazy because in hindsight, like, why did I put money on Jamal Hill? Like, why did we think he was going to? Yeah, alert. I don't know. Bad bet there, bad beat. And no, he was losing that fight the minute it started. Pereira's just better all around, and being off so long with such a bad injury, like, you don't come back against Alex Pereira. One, you wait the full 15 months, and then you get a can fed to you, and then you go title contend again. I don't know. He just wasn't ready.
When I saw the odds, I remember being like, who would bet on Jamal Hill basically at even money? And Jake's the guy. There he is. Hand up. Wow. Okay. Good for you. I do think he beats Khalil Roundtree, though. I'm not saying it's a tune-up fight, but I think Jamal Hill, and I could be wrong about this one, too, because Roundtree's got a couple of highlight knockouts also. Who you like in that one at 303?
I like Jamal Hill as well. Obviously, light heavyweight, Khalil Roundtree, there's always the chance you get clipped. But Hill's problem isn't really power and sloppy boxing. His his difficulty was Alex Pereira, technical, best in the world kickboxing. Khalil Roundtree doesn't have that. He might have power like Pereira has, but he doesn't have that technical ability. He's much more of a brawler, closing distance, throwing wild haymakers, and it works for him. But Jamal Hill's the bigger guy, a longer, taller, better all-around skill set. Hill should be able to win this. This is a perfect fight for Hill to come back from. Like, we didn't need that Pereira fight. Roundtree would have been a good opponent for him to fight at 300, you know?
You also got to be a fight geek like us to really watch this whole card. And there's some sneaky fun fights on there. Killer Cub Swanson against Andre Fili comes to mind. UFC Louisville coming up here in a few weeks. The return of the Killer Gorilla, Jared Cannonier. I love it when that guy steps into the octagon. He's also one of those guys that, like, I don't want to call him a gatekeeper necessarily, but man, he's been really close now for a long time. I guess that's a little bit harsh because he actually did fight for the title, a year and a half ago. Looking back on that, though, kind of crazy also. Like, really? Cannonier had a chance to win the belt?
I mean, the whole middleweight division's kind of like that. It's just been
Touché.
Adesanya. You know, you got Cannonier, Whitaker, Costa, Strickland. Like, there's so many guys who are just on that door. Some of them have even tasted it, but they can't really get past the Pereira and Adesanya monster. I think Cannonier should handle Imavov. I mean, probably a knockout, maybe a decision, but Imavov's just one of those guys who he's long, he's tricky, he's very technical. Cannonier sometimes doesn't have a lot of output and struggles to find the power shot. So I don't know. It's not a fight that really excites me for a main event. I think UFC 300 killed a lot of the luster coming up, but that's a Cannonier fight to win.
You're right, though. Like, as you say it about a lot of those fighters, it's tough to kind of put your finger on how good is Robert Whitaker right now? How good is Paulo Costa right now? That division, I don't want to say it's a mess, but it's certainly a tricky one. We talked about before the last commercial, they're withholding the purses right now of both Arman Sarukian and Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez jumped over the octagon. Did I miss something there? Or is this just the commission holding it over a kid's head? Because that's a lot of money. That's the biggest payday he's ever going to have. Seems a little bit silly. I know technically it's a rule and you're supposed to have some of your purse withheld and suspended. This happens.
Apparently, ever since UFC 229, when Khabib jumped the octagon and attacked Dylan Dennis and Conor McGregor's team, the word on the street is Vegas takes 50% of your purse anytime you jump the octagon now. I've heard that this has been overturned before. Fighters have gotten their purses back. It sounds like Diego will probably get a slap on the wrist here and a harsh warning, but that's why. I don't think it was anything personal. I think just with the caliber of event 300 was, they had to stick true to their rules.
You know what that sounds like to me? Jake Noecker, Sports Machine, Sean Levine here on the BetQL Network. I was washing my car a couple of weeks ago, right? And I'll admit, I should have checked and rolled up all my windows, but I didn't. I left the back one a little bit cracked. Why isn't there a giant sign that's flashing right outside of the car wash that says, hey, idiots like Sean, make sure, double check that all your windows are up because there's about to be a pool in your back seat if you don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, certain things need certain warning. Can I get a warning? Is that asking too much? Can't they tell me right before the fight? I'm talking about right before the fight. Announce who the referee is and then say, oh, by the way, if the winner jumps over the side of the octagon, they're going to half his purse? That's crazy, dude.
It is crazy, especially because he got that bonus. That's a big purse, man. That's just the commission
tough.
Being stingy.
That is tough. And then Arman Sarukian, he was walking into the fight against Charles Oliveira, and I was all amped up because I emptied my piggy bank out on Charles Oliveira, and I was texting everybody I knew that he was going to win the fight. And then next thing I know, I'm not sure the fight's going to happen because Arman Sarukian's punching some dude in the crowd. I'm like, dude, you're so close. You got to at least make it there. If you're going to withhold somebody's money, damn it, take that guy's money. Yeah, I'm bitter, but take that guy's money.
Did you see that video, too? Like, the fan didn't even... I don't think he deserved all that, man.
I think that Sarukian was a little bit jacked up, and yeah, it's kind of crazy that happened. Speaking of, while we're talking sports here, and then by the way, to finish up the show in our final segment, we're going to bring on friend of the show, Andrew Gombas. NBA playoffs going on as we speak. The Miami Heat got absolutely torched by the Boston Celtics, and you're out east, and you say they suck. Your 76ers finally got a game. You look at me like you got a chance. Don't kid yourself here, dude. You don't really think the Sixers have
across the screen?
You don't really think
No.
the Sixers have a shot here? Okay.
Honestly, I don't think they make it past the Knicks, but there's hope. I have hope they make it past the Knicks. I have zero hope they make it past whoever they play in the second round. It's just a Philadelphia curse. So, no, I'm not loving the Sixers' playoffs chances. You can't be a front office in Philadelphia and think that Embiid and one other guy is going to win it for 6 or 7 years in a row. How many times do you need to learn the same? I'm sorry, I'm ranting. Mad Philadelphia fan.
It's all right. Oh, and your former boy, James Harden's actually putting the ball through the hoop. That can't help you at all. It doesn't matter because the Celtics, I think, are going to end up in the NBA Finals. Celtics took care of the Heat earlier today, 104-84. So if you bet that one, you did not hit the overs. You did cover on your Celtics. The early game today, the Thunder absolutely rolled the Pelicans. Looks like they're going to sweep them up 3-0. And then tipping off here, Jake, in just a little while, and then we'll get back to the fights, the Nuggets and the Lakers. It looks like the Lakers are cooked, man. Like, what a weird series this has been, where I would say the Lakers have been the better team. I would say the Lakers have had more minutes where they looked like a better team during the series, yet also it looks like the Nuggets are going to end up winning this thing, maybe sweeping it, and then you have to ask long-term questions about LeBron James. Like, this has been a wild one. And for the record, I think the Nuggets roll them tonight. Nuggets right now 3.5-point favorites at BetMGM.
No, Lakers are done. I mean, it's you can't build a team around a 39-year-old, however old he is, LeBron James anymore. It just doesn't work. I love that he has this longevity. He's the GOAT, especially for my generation. But, dude, it's time to hang him up. I know he wants to wait for Bronny next season. That'll be determining where he plays, but that's it. He gets his walk-off into the sunset season next year. Hopefully John Jones follows suit, too.
It was so easy to make money during these NBA playoffs. And sorry for sounding arrogant, but like right now, the Bucks and the Pacers, Indiana leads that series up 2-1. And I get it. The Bucks had a couple of clutch shots yesterday. That was a crazy one. If you saw Chris Middleton hit a couple of shots to tie it up at the end, that's the best they got, and they still lost. And they're without Giannis. We'll see if he ends up coming back at all during this series. Bucks are done. A lot of that has to do with their head coach. Same thing with like the Timberwolves and the Suns. Why would anybody think that a team that's led by Kevin Durant was going to take down a team that had, for a long time, the best record in basketball, the Minnesota Timberwolves? What are we talking about? How many different times do we need to see Kevin Durant be the leader of a team, Oklahoma City, Brooklyn, fail, and put your money on him? Right now, of course, the Timberwolves are up 3-0 in that series. So NBA playoffs roll on. Fights go on tonight. We've got a couple of fights left. I've got my money on Superman tonight. That is Ryan Spann. I think he ends up winning that fight by knockout. And then, of course, in the main event, that is Matthias Nicolau taking on Alex Perez. Right now, Perez the underdog at +150. Hey, come on. It's Saturday night. Let's get parlayed. Do it with me, people. Alex Perez +150. Ryan Spann by knockout. $20 makes us a cool 150 at BetMGM. I like it. I love it. Coming up next, we welcome on friend of the show, Andrew Gombas from Bets and Picks MMA. We talk some more UFC, and then we wrap this bad boy up. That's Jake. I'm the Sports Machine, and you for one more segment right here on the BetQL Network.
Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Putting a bow on this edition of Tapped Out with Jake Noecker. I'm the Sports Machine, Sean Levine, waiting on Andrew Gombas to join us. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Either way, we talk fighting here in the final segment. Jake, the latest pound-for-pound rankings are out. Let's count back from 10 to 1. Pantoja, Dracus Duplessis. How about this, dude? Max Holloway. Max Holloway is back in the pound-for-pound top 10.
That makes sense. Dracus doesn't belong in there.
At number 8, Volk still in the top 10. I guess that's a little bit surprising. At number 7, at number 6, Sean O'Malley. And your top 5, Ilya Topuria. Number 4, Alex Pereira. 3, Leon Edwards. 2, John Jones. And 1, Islam Makhachev. I was going to ask you if you had any problem with any of those guys, but clearly you take issue with DDP being at number 9.
Yeah, Dreykus, that's a weird one. Leon Edwards being so high up, that's kind of a weird one. John Jones should be number 1, but I don't know, man. That's a weird list. Always has been. How do you determine that?
What's the problem with Leon being number 3? That's exactly where he should be. Leon hasn't lost a
I
fight in like 6 years.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I was going to say the wrestling, but I guess Leon's been out wrestling some wrestlers lately, so maybe Leon does deserve to be up that high.
If anything, Pereira's a tough one to figure out because he actually has lost fights, but he's also got a bunch of belts. So, you know what? I have no problem with it. Taporia at 5 actually might be a little high. No offense, it feels like he's on the rise, but at 5 pound for pound already? Really?
I mean, knocking out Volk, man, that's a big deal. I know
It
that's
doesn't
like his
hurt.
biggest win by far, but that's huge, man. That's huge.
Oliveira right on the outside of the top 10. He's number 11, followed by Israel Adesanya, Tom Aspinall, Sean Strickland at number 14, and then Aljamain Sterling, coming in at number 15. Let's recap where we've been in case anybody missed anything during the show today. We started off talking some boxing. Ryan Garcia took out Devin Haney by decision. I think most people thought Devin Haney, obviously most people thought Haney was a huge favorite to win that fight. The dream goes down to the king, Ryan Garcia. Now the question is, what's next? He definitely has options. Jake, you're definitely more of an MMA guy than a boxing guy. So what's your level of interest in a crossover if we ever did see Ryan Garcia against Sean O'Malley?
Hey, I'll watch it. You know me. If I'm watching a boxing match, it's a circus match that makes no sense with Jake Paul or Tyson Fury and Ngannou or Sean O'Malley. So
A
I'm all
Bear and
about it.
Khabib and Manute Bull.
Something.
I get it.
Yeah, not the biggest boxing guy, but those kind of fights I like, and I think every party involved in that fight on Garcia's side and O'Malley's side, they all like money, and that's all it is at the end of the day. I'm sure Dana and Oscar could shake hands for 10 minutes of a boxing match or an hour of a boxing match to make it happen.
I don't know. I wonder if that has gotten too deep and too bitter where, like PT said earlier in the show, that's the problem. Isn't it funny? Because there's not, like, how many people do you think Dana White actually, I'm sure he has issues with a lot and vice versa, but that he actually hates and won't do business with? It's crazy that the promoter it happens to be one of those guys, because if not, you know how much money they made? Everybody involved for the McGregor versus Mayweather thing. Dana made in his pocket. Floyd made, Connor made, ridiculous amounts of money. We're talking everybody that I just named made hundreds of millions of dollars on one fight. You would think they can make it work, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just too practical for all that. Speaking of fights coming up soon inside the octagon at UFC 302, we've got the Diamond, Dustin Poirier, against Islam Makhachev. Right now, you can get almost 4-1 money as I hit puberty live on the radio because I'm so shocked. 4-1 money on Dustin Poirier. Did he not just finish Benoit Saint Denis and tried to finish him like 10 times during that fight? I'm not saying Poirier is going to beat Islam. There's a reason Islam's number 1 pound for pound, like we just said. But dude, there's no way he should be that big of an underdog. That's crazy.
It's the Dagestani effect, man. These guys come in. Khabib did the same thing. He's a minus 300, minus 400 favorite over everybody they go against. And it ends up being correct most of the time. But I think the problem here that matchmakers see is Dustin Poirier in his last fight pulling a guillotine every takedown attempt and then doubling down and saying, I'm going to keep pulling a guillotine, and then tripling down and saying, Islam, I'm going to catch you in a guillotine. Then Islam tweets out, you can't wait for Dustin to go for a guillotine because there's absolutely no way Dustin guillotines Islam Makhachev. So I think Islam takes Justin down and manhandles him for 5 rounds.
But that guillotine you're talking about, he eventually came off it and knocked the dude out. Poirier knew what he was doing in that last fight. Yeah, for whatever reason, he wanted to. He was hell-bent that he was going to choke him out. And yeah, I had a little bit of money by knockout, so I was yelling at my TV like, dude, just finish him. And when he did, I was a happy man that night. A few minutes left here on Tapped Out. Jake Noecker and me, the sports machine, Sean Levine. Jake, you and I haven't really chopped it up too much about the Chandler-McGregor fight. That's the pay-per-view after the next pay-per-view, So it's in the hole, if this were baseball, if you will. It'll be batting at some point this inning. I think Michael Chandler finishes him. I don't think it takes long either. I suppose the path for McGregor to win is first round knockout, but even if that one gets to like the second round, McGregor's getting older. McGregor's getting maybe some stuff in his body since the last. I'm trying to be careful here. Since the last time that we saw him, his ankle was on sideways. What I'm telling you is, how much cash do we really think's left in that tank, dude?
I think McGregor's coming in here and knocking out Chandler. I don't know. You know me. I'll bet against McGregor because of my stupid heart insurance. But no, I think Chandler's a good matchup for McGregor. Chandler goes in there a little bit reckless and leaves his chin wide open. Sure, he can take you down, but he's not known for keeping you down. I think McGregor's going to be able to catch him early. I think being at 170 pounds is a huge advantage. I think if this is at lightweight, McGregor would be gassed after half a round. So I think 170, McGregor might be able to go a little bit further into this fight than we think. And I think he cracks Chandler. I think Chandler's going to go for a dirty shot and get cracked coming in.
Let's say you're right. You're wrong, but let's say you're right. Do you think that the next fight for McGregor would be for the belt? Because there's nothing that Dana White would love than to give him, like, no, you're shaking your head?
I don't think he'll fight again after Chandler if he fights Chandler. I mean, I'm not convinced this fight's even going to happen. It's been 3.5 years. Before that, it was what, another 3.5 years? Like, I just think McGregor's made his money. He's made his peace. He has done what he wanted to do, and now that he can't do what he wants to do anymore, he stays away from it. If you have an ego as big as McGregor, you can't go in there and keep losing fights. You just can't do it.
Well, they better hope that fight goes down because, as you said, and it's not just that UFC 300 was so good. UFC 299 was such a stat card also, where you've got all those names on both those cards. You've got John Jones on the shelf for a while. You've got Adesanya probably still on the shelf for a little while. You've got Gaethje saying that he's not going to fight for a while. It just feels like at this point, Conor McGregor could really breathe some life back into this thing, especially if he goes out there and wins. Because if he wins, you know what it sets up? It sets up the trilogy versus Nate Diaz. I hear what you're saying. Maybe the fight's never going to happen coming up against Michael Chandler. But to me, the biggest possible fight that Conor McGregor can have is not against Poirier. It's not for the belt. It's not for the BMF. None of those things. It's the trilogy against Nate Diaz. It's personally, to me, if you ask me, what are my 5 favorite fights? 2 of them are Conor Nate 1 and Nate Conor 2. We have to see that one a third time, right?
Yeah, I just think for the closure, it's 1-1 doesn't sit right with me with Nate and Conor. That it has to be settled someday. I don't know how it happens, especially because it looks like Conor's maybe on the way out and Nate's, maybe talking about coming back to the UFC. But we are now joined by Andrew Gombas. So Andrew, 1, welcome to the show. 2, right off the bat, who takes it, man? Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler, and 2, do we ever see Nate v. Conor 3?
Yeah, great questions right off the bat. I love it. Conor's like one of the main reasons I went from like a casual MMA guy to just in love with the sport. So, I'm always a little bit romantic, for lack of a better word, about his run, his rise up, his era. But in my opinion, it's sad to say, but that time's over. I mean, I don't even think he really trains like a full-time fighter. I'm pretty confident in saying that. Michael Chandler, in Conor's prime, that's a great matchup for Conor, but I don't even think we're really getting Conor the fighter here. This is Conor off of a 3-year layoff injury who looked out of his prime 4 years ago. So I just can't imagine him coming back and looking good. Like, it's a tough one for me because, like I said, if Conor comes back looking even remotely similar to himself, like, this would be a good fight for him. Like, Chandler is just the type of guy Conor fought his whole career, like the Eddie Alvarez, the Chad Mendes, who, he obviously had a lot of success against. But I just don't think he's the Conor McGregor we knew and loved. So I'm going to go with Michael Chandler when that fight happens. And my answer to your second question is contingent on the first. I think if Conor loses to Chandler, he's probably done. If he wins, I think that's a high possibility that he fights Nate in the third fight. I think he knows, and the people around him know, that if he can't beat a guy like Michael Chandler, who he would have smoked 5 years ago, 7 years ago, probably even 3 years ago. I think they're going to know it's probably time to say when. But yeah, I'm one of those people, even though he is past his prime and, he is coming off of an injury layoff, I'm still looking forward to him coming back. It's just something about Conor McGregor Fight Week is really special. He brought this sport to the next level. So I give him a ton of props. Obviously, Michael Chandler is a super exciting fighter. Like, I'll say this, I'd be very surprised if it's a boring fight.
Make sure you follow our guest Andrew Gombas at Bets and Picks MMA. Good friend of the show. In fact, if you don't mind, come back on the show next week. I know this is awkward, but now the show's over, but not as awkward as the date that I have coming up after the show, because she already told me that she thinks that I'm ugly, but she also thinks she told me I'm funny. So coming up next week, hopefully we get Andrew Gombas back on the show, and I'll report back if the girl that thinks I've got a good sense of humor and that I'm also hideous looking gives me a second date. Don't go anywhere. All that coming up next week right here for Andrew and BT and Jake. I'm the Sports Machine. We'll talk to you next week right here on Tapped Out. Good night.